For years, I thought that leadership was about managing people, having a team, delegating, supervising, the whole works of it. But over the years, especially in some of my senior roles, and when I got a role in particular, which I'll share later on, I learned that sometimes you are called to lead even when no one reports to you. And that's when I discovered the power of self leadership, the discipline to grow, deliver, and inspire yourself even when no one is watching. But even more importantly, how that has helped and contributed to my career growth and acceleration, and how you can use the same for yourself. So there were seasons in my career where I had a title that sounded like I was a big deal. But I was not managing anyone directly in those roles. And at first, it felt strange. I wondered, am I really a leader if I'm not leading a team? And even with the way that the jobs are categorized or classified, I was in what you'd call a management classification position. And so typically, this would be positions that one would want to think, if you're holding any of those kinds of position, then you're in leadership, in the traditional sense of how many of us think of leadership within the workplace, meaning that you're supervising people, you have people who are reporting to you. But I soon realized that leadership in a lot of workplaces in Canada was not really about title, but more so about attitude, responsibilities, and oftentimes what has been delegated to you to do, and certain information that you have to be a gatekeeper of or manage. And because of those kinds of information or certain rooms you have to play in, you are classified management, and it may not necessarily have anything to do with people reporting to you. Plus, there's also the part where how sometimes you are looking for titles, right? And in looking for titles, you're searching and you're searching, and this is what happened to me, right? I was looking for titles. I was looking for the title. I was searching, and I remember one time my mentor had asked me, exactly is it that you need? Do you want the title or do you want the money that comes with the title? And I said, well, why can't I have both? And truly, I wanted both. But you know how sometimes you think you want something and you don't really know until you get something, until you get it, or until you get something that feels better. That's what happened to me. So I got into a different organization after I left provincial government. And in this position, not only was I able to, I started making what directors were not making in provincial government. And it was crazy because now all of a sudden I wanted to be a director so bad, chasing that title. And here I was now making more money than most directors would have. And it really got me thinking, like, if I can. And I started to also see my career projection in this new organization. Like, by the time I hit director level in this place, it was probably like at this point, like two steps from it in this new organization. But if I had stayed, in the provincial government, I was literally like one step away from it. But now in this position, in this new organization, I was like two steps away from being a director, but I was earning more than what I would have earned as a director in provincial government. That really got me thinking. It really got me thinking about what I said I wanted and why. But here's the good news is eventually I came down to realize that I still wanted the title just where I'm going my career. But the good thing is now it's better crystallized and clear and more purposeful for me, because I was forced when I started making the money directors will make. And even be able to get some, because I also got performance pay in this position as well, good performance pay, you know. And when I got to the point where I'm at the crossroads of, do I really want this position or did I always just want the money? Because now that I'm making the money and even more, it really forced me to dig deep and really think to myself and figure out why exactly I thought I wanted the position. And of course, the money, we all know why we want the money, right? But anyway, I was forced to sit with myself, reflect, and answer that question for myself. And now it's a whole lot more purposeful for me. And so, but one thing I realized very quickly is that leadership really is not about the title. And I mean, I've always known that, right? But it's a different thing when you come into scenarios and situations that really force you to see it in a whole new light, right? And that's what happened for me. So yes, I had those seasons, but one of the things that by the time I came into this role, and many of the positions I've held, like even when I was in provincial government, were mostly within the management classification. I just didn't have the title and I didn't have the money to back it up as well. But I was now in a place where I had the money and to back it up, and it was good. But one of the biggest lessons that this has taught me in all is that leadership really starts with self mastery, right? So before you can even lead others, you can lead yourself. Your mindset, your time, your emotions, your growth, all of it comes into being. Because now being in this place and realizing that, oh, by the way, the word they give it is individual contributor, right? So that's the reality of being an individual contributor, is that you are leading yourself. You might still lead people, projects, things in a way that even traditional leaders may not lead, and that's the interesting thing, right? Because I often found myself in rooms leading leaders, right? Eventually what I really did was leading leaders, and I would often joke around it, and say that it felt like herding cats, right? And it was actually really quite difficult to lead leaders, right? Because they think they know, and they truly know, that's why they're leaders, right? And they think they know, and then you come in and you're trying to lead them and guide them into making decisions for the organizations, and sometimes that can be really tough. But thankfully I was able to navigate through all of that. But one of the things that all of that experience taught me about leadership in itself is that leadership really starts with self-mastery, and before you truly can lead others, you must lead yourself. And so that's one of the things that taught me. And so knowing that now, it begs the question, then what does leadership really look like, or self-leadership look like in practice? And it was one competency that my mentor really then buckled down on and had me really build on, was self-leadership. And I'm really grateful for that experience in itself, because again, like I said, I was leading leaders, right? And to lead leaders, you need to be able to, first of all, lead yourself. You see things, hear things, that access things that others may not, in a way, and you really have to be able to lead yourself through all of that, navigate all of that for yourself, and then help them navigate that as leaders. It's tough, but it's doable, and I love doing it, by the way, and I'm sure you can tell. So what does it really mean to lead yourself? And I found that quite often it involves 3 core habits, or 3 core traits. Number 1, self-awareness. You have to understand your strength, triggers, and blind spots. You really have to understand. And I'm also going to, as I'm going through this, I'll tie back into how this shows up in your career. And I've used this to actually help clients in my business, in career coaching, to help them just position themselves better as for just overall within your career growth, right? So understand your strength, your triggers, and understand your blind spots. I started asking for me questions like, what environments would help me thrive, what drains me, right? And really just paying attention to, where do I, when I do certain work, where do I have high energies and where do I have low energies? Where do I have, where are the things that I can do that it's a no-brainer? If you wake me up in the middle of the night and you throw me in the midst of it, I will still thrive. And where are the areas where it will take me a while to just get it, right? And so really just starting to understand myself helped me a lot to just become more aware of what my strengths are, where I might be lacking in certain areas, and also knowing how to position myself. Now, what did this for me in my career is that it also helped me understand the kind of jobs. So when I'm now looking at jobs, I'm not just looking at job titles anymore. I'm not just looking at, not just the titles anymore, of course, because, and again, when I get a title that does not fit what I want, but paid me better than what I wanted, it makes you really even be more mindful about not just staying fixated on job titles, right? And so I would look at the job description. I will talk to people who work in that organization. If I can even get the hiring manager or the person who was in that role, I get to talk to them, and I want to understand what is in this role. And what I'm looking for really is, I'm matching that with who I am, with where my strength lie. I'm matching that to see where are the areas that I might need to brush up a little bit, knowledge-wise, skill-wise, and otherwise, right? I'm looking at all of that. And so journaling in my career, that's really how I started journaling my career and journaling my successes, journaling where I struggled, where I was facing challenges, why I was facing those challenges, right? All of this really started to help me get to know myself better. I took personality tests to really get to know and understand myself better. And it also helped me understand areas in my life and my career that I also needed to grow. And when I show up in rooms, it always made me know that it gave me the tools and the power to show up in my best authentic self, but making sure that I know the area of myself I'm really putting forward. And it always works. It always works. And even when you're joining up into interviews, you're able to speak to your strengths better because now you know yourself a lot better. Just get to know yourself. That's what self-awareness is. Know thyself, okay? And I believe it was Socrates who said this: to thy own self be true, right? When you know yourself, be true to yourself, because that's how exactly you get to grow. And you can't lead others if you don't even know who you are. How are you going to show up? How are you going to lead? What strength are you going to pull from to lead them? How are you going to understand your blind spots, right? Okay, so the second piece is self-management. Right, so it's not enough to know yourself. You must also be able to manage yourself, managing your emotions in tough meetings, managing your time when no one is setting deadlines. One of the biggest challenges I found about being an individual contributor, of course, you still have a manager that you report to, no doubt, quite often. But one of the biggest challenges I find is that people just sort of assume that you're already leadership material. So nobody's really telling you much of what to do, right? And I will really share something with, newcomers, especially to Canada, because this will come as culture shock to a lot of people. And I see a lot of newcomers fall for this, and I'm going to talk about that in a bit here, right? But you must learn how to manage your emotions. You must learn how to manage your time, because no one is going to likely be setting those deadlines for you. As a matter of fact, even your leader expects that you are coming to them with problem solutions, recommendations on how to move forward with things. They're looking to you to dictate the direction and tune of your career as well, right? So I will create my own accountability systems, my own mini check-ins with my manager. I will do my mini check-ins. I will do my project trackers myself. I would schedule my thinking time. I would plan. I would reflect. I would set my action time. I will block out calendars on my own end for things that I need to work on. I will block out, like, I knew, okay, so self-awareness, right? I also knew even my work style. I started understanding my flow, my best flow hours, right? And I would make sure that I guarded those times on my calendar like it was everything. I won't schedule meetings because those are the times that I can really get down, and with full focus I would go like real fast and cover a lot of ground in my work. So I would do all of that, right? And the interesting thing is, now all of these things are really helpful to me because I'm in a PhD program. I work from my home. I run my own business. I work from my home, do my schoolwork, do my research projects with the city that I'm working with. I'm doing all of this all on my own, right? And if I didn't have the time and opportunity to be trained in this manner, where I'm really just setting the pace and directing my life for myself, my career and all of that, I probably won't be able to cope right now because nobody's telling me what to do. I have to make sure that I set things in place. And when I understand the places where I'm struggling, I could submit myself to accountability systems with partners that I'm working with to say, hey, hold me accountable in this area, hold me accountable in that area, because I recognize those areas as potential places where I may fall or I may drop the ball if someone else is not, sort of just looking over. But I initiated, or at least I would have to initiate those conversations, right? So really, it's not enough to just know yourself. When you know yourself, you also need to learn how to self-regulate or self-manage yourself. And again, even within workplaces, this in itself is just a skill set that a lot of people would need to learn, right? It's a skill set a lot of people would need to learn, and it's something that a lot of people would also need to it's something a lot of people would also need to learn how to show up on. Just even like if you're seen doing this on your own, it shows that you really are leadership material, because then again, if you can't manage yourself, you can't manage others. You're going to learn how to do these things for yourself and for other people when you do eventually get into positions where you are managing other people. The third piece is self-development, right? And again, in the roles where I had no one reporting to me, one of the things you realize is that your growth is your responsibility. So again, like I said, people view you through the lens of you are a leader, whether or not you have someone reporting to you, they assume you know a lot. And you don't want to show up not knowing. So again, self-awareness, when you understand where you're lacking potentially or where your gaps are, you then create an opportunity for yourself to close those gaps. And sometimes how you close that gap can be through knowledge, it can be through experience, it can be through just developing certain skill sets. And so when I recognize this, again, I'm talking to my manager and we're sort of working through this together as well to say, hey, so here's what I'm gonna need to help me succeed. And of course, your success is your manager's success, right? So here's what I'm gonna need to help me succeed. And here are trainings that I think would help with that. And I'll make the business case for all of that. But really, again, just owning that self growth. And again, this is a mindset that you need if you're going to succeed in Canada as a newcomer, if you're going to succeed in your career overall, period. So I had to be very intentional about learning, not just waiting for training budgets. And by the way, there's always training budgets in most places. And if there's something I've understood, most people do not utilize training budgets. Please utilize training budget. The calendar year is coming to an end right now. And some organizations, depending on if they do calendar year for closing out the year or if they do a fiscal year, but whatever the case is, whether you do fiscal or calendar, the year end for most people is December or March 31st, right? And that's coming right up pretty fast. So, and oftentimes directors, managers are looking for how to exhaust certain budgets. Training is often one of those budgets they're trying to exhaust. So now is the time. Look for a course you can take, educate yourself, take advantage of those budgets, and develop yourself. Okay, but anyway, I digress, right? But I had to be very intentional about my own growth. I had to be very intentional to push myself outside my comfort zone. That's how I was able to evolve, not because someone pushed me, but because I am choosing to grow. And again, taking that back to my leaders and talking to them. I remember when I needed to do like management certification, right? I looked at what we were doing, what I needed, and just helping me understand. One of my colleagues and she chose to do a business analysis training. I chose to do a project management training. In the end, both certifications really helped both of us. You don't even want to know how many roles I've held where they'll tell me, oh, a project management certification is an asset or is required. And guess what? I'll show up on those jobs and it's not really a lot of project management, right? But I have it. What if I never took advantage of that opportunity to get that in my training because the budget was there, right? I had another colleague who, leveraging that also went in for leadership training and all that. And they're better off with that today, right? So really choose to grow and then go seek out how you can grow. Talk to your direct supervisors, but at the end of the day, you really are the one that is pushing yourself. So let's talk about why self-leadership matters, and especially if you're a newcomer to Canada. Now, this is the part where I was talking about how as newcomers, as immigrants, we're coming from cultures where we're being told what to do. We're coming from very directive cultures where you're told what to do. And if you don't have something to do, it's not a big deal. Whereas in Canada, if you're waiting for someone to tell you what to do and you're looking for direction from supervisors, mentors, or the system, believe me, you will be greatly derailed in your career. Because here it's believed that the greatest accelerator to your career and your life in general and even your work is you. All right, so understanding that nobody's going to tell you what to do. I mean, there are tasks that will be assigned to you, but when it really comes down to it, people expect you to take initiative and problem solve. And I see a lot of newcomers tend to fall for this. More than half the times that I've had to deal with people who lost their jobs and we're trying to help them work back into getting another job back into the workplace. Oftentimes when it's down to they were let go, what it comes down to typically has always been just a misunderstanding of that system and how it works here. And quite often this is where they fall off. And so recognizing that, it's important that we really speak to it. And self-leadership is one of the ways that you really help get yourself. Where are your strengths? Where are your strengths? Where are your weaknesses? Where are your opportunities for growth? That's how you show up, right? And then when you're in your workplace, when you're in your task and jobs that you're doing, you're leveraging your strength to enhance the work that you do. you're leveraging you're taking advantage, you're taking note of where you have gaps, and you're taking advantage of trainings and opportunities and stretch works to close those gaps by developing the skills you need, or by taking the trainings that you need or learnings based on what your organization allows and permits, right? And even just your manager seeing you come and talk about how I recognize I have a gap in this area of knowledge, or I have a skill gap in this area, in itself tells them that you're somebody who is fully self-aware. And that's one of the biggest tell signs of a great leader, is that they are self-aware. It is one of the biggest great tell signs. So you begin to see how even self-leadership starts to help you as an individual grow. There's no interview or moment of conversation where I have told people why I do the business that I do that it doesn't leave them in awe, because in that one story, I often would share about how, I understood that I was doing something wrong, hence I wasn't getting, called for job interviews. And when I figured that out, I knew I'd figured it out, and then I wasn't landing the jobs, and how I was constantly just sort of seek what I need to change and do better. There is no place or no one with whom I've shared that story that isn't in complete awe. And like, wow, you're a super person. I'm not, by the way. But, they tend to think that because, again, like I said, self-awareness is a big tell sign of a great leader and of somebody who will go far in life, because you know what your strengths are. You're playing to that. You know where your weaknesses are. You're working to cover those gaps, right? And so the same way, when you're applying that even to yourself as a newcomer, to say, where are my strengths and how can I leverage that for career opportunities in Canada, right? So on one hand, it helps you in your job navigation process. On the other hand, when you get into the workplace, it's a quick way to really just understanding the workplace and showing up in a way that really just sets you apart as a star from the beginning you land in there. All right. So self leadership really is about the building capacity, building resilience, and building adaptability. And these are all qualities that, quite frankly, employers really value. So even when opportunities are limited, your initiative will set you apart. And that's true. That is always true. Okay. So one thing I've learned in my career journey in Canada, and just going through different roles, is that being an individual contributor doesn't make you less of a leader. Really, it gives you the space that you need to prove that you can lead yourself first. All right. And the people who master that, they're the ones who, they tend to trust with bigger opportunities down the line. So even if no one is pushing right now, take that as a cue to push yourself and be better, and grow yourself, right? And make sure that somehow you're keeping yourself visible as you're going through all of this, because if nobody knows that you're growing, then what did you do all that for, right? They're not going to give you the opportunities still, because they didn't see you navigate that process. So make sure that there's someone make sure that there's somebody who is seeing you grow through this process, walk through this process. And as you do that, your opportunities will really roll in. And so, yeah, so that's that. So tell me in the comments below, what's one area you're committing to lead yourself better in this season, because guess what? Leadership really starts within. All right. And I will see you in the next episode. And by the way, thanks to all who have been watching this series that I've been doing so far. I've really been doing deep reflections on my career and what my life has looked like. And this is episode 9. And the next episode on this will be the final episode. And it's really been a great journey. So thank you to everyone who has been watching, who has been commenting, who has been sharing. I really appreciate all that you're doing, and I see you. And believe me, we are going to all celebrate one another at the top for sure. Okay, all right. I'll see you in the next video. Take care. Bye.